Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to the state of California on the west coast of America again, and we're going to revisit one of the kind of pioneering American craft breweries. So of course I'm talking about Anchor Brewing Company from San Francisco, as you might have been able to tell from the shape of the bottle, and today we're going to have a taste of the California Lager. Now I do quite enjoy some of the beers from Anchor. The Red Leaf Maple or Big Leaf Maple is a beautiful beer. Breckles Brown and Old Foghorn, they're really nice as well. Some of my favourite kind of go-to American craft beers, so hopefully the lager is a really nice one. This one was first produced in 2012 incidentally. But as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. Will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, and you'll also find a link down there to my other reviews that I've done from Anchor before. I'm sure I will add to that in the near future as well, so they'll appear when I actually record them and publish them for you. And please do add me as a friend on Untappd and like my Facebook page as well. You can find the links to that below also. So anyway, as I've told you many a time, Anchor Brewery was founded by German brewer Gottlieb Brekel in 1849, and the first bar was a billiard saloon on Pacific Street in San Francisco, and this was while the gold rush was going on in America, of course. But like many kind of long-standing breweries, these guys have had their fair share of bad luck. So the brewery became known as the Anchor Brewery officially in 1896 when it was bought by fellow Germans Ernst Barrett and Otto Schinkel. Now suddenly Ernst Barrett died in 1906, and then the brewery was consumed by a fire caused by the great earthquake of that year as well. And just after relocating to their new premises in 1907, Otto Schinkel was actually hit by a streetcar. Fortunately though, the brewery was maintained by other German brewers Josef Kraus and August Meyer, and also liquor store owner Henry Tietjen. Now Anchor though was effectively shut down in 1920 with the introduction of Prohibition in the States. Quite a kind of black period in American history there. But there's actually little or no record of the Anchor Brewery doing anything either legal or illegal during the period, although their website admits that there may have been some activities at the brewery during that time. But Prohibition thankfully ended in 1933, and Josef Kraus once again began brewing the steam beer after a hiatus of 13 years. But the brewery then had another stroke of bad luck in 1933 when it caught fire once again, but Josef Kraus reopened the brewery in an old brick building with a new partner at a location a few streets away from their current location now at the old coffee place. But Kraus and Joe Allen managed to keep Anchor afloat until Kraus's death in 1952, but by late 1959 the demand for mass-produced beers resulted in declining sales for the small brewery, and Joe actually shut the brewery down. Thankfully though, it reopened in 1960, and Allen was joined by Lawrence Striese, but the problems with the mass-produced beer market continued, and once again the brewery looked as if it might close. Now Fritz Maytag actually heard of the problems, and he bought a 51% share in the brewery, saving it from imminent bankruptcy in 1965. But in 1971 Fritz bottled the steam beer for the first time, and the brewery has began to grow steadily and has done so ever since. But the brewery then moved to their current location at an old coffee roastery in Mariposa Street in the city, and in 2010, after 45 years at the helm, Fritz Maytag announced his retirement and the sale of the brewery to Keith Gregor and Tony Folliot, who had agreed to preserve and expand the brewery's iconic operations. So as you can tell from that very brief history, these guys are one of the really kind of iconic and sort of legendary breweries, if you like, of the United States. One of the very first craft breweries, in fact, if not the first. I forget which one is actually the oldest craft brewery in America. But just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, you get the Anchor Small, Liberty Ale, which is an IPA, Anchor Porter, Old Foghorn, which is a really nice barley wine ale, Breckles Brown, which is one of my favourite beers as I told you, the California Lager, this guy here, Humming Ale Bock beer, Big Leaf Maple, which was really nice one as well, and they also have Our Barrel Ale, and they also have their annual Christmas beers as well, which you'll find in any good beer shop. We can get them over here in Scotland in some of our better beer dealers. But anyway, that's your kind of brief history of Anchor Brewing Company, so let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer. Now this one is a 4.9% lager. It contains 2 row malts and cluster hops. Hop variety I've never encountered actually, but supposed to be a very nice lager one. I'll just read the little commercial description on this one here. It says, Anchor Steam's roots go back to the gold rush, long before ice houses and modern refrigeration made traditional lagers viable Californian option. In 1876, thanks to an ice pond in the mountains and a belief that anything is possible in the Golden State, a little brewery named Boca created California's first genuine lager. Anchor California Lager is our recreation of this historic beer made in San Francisco with two-row California barley, cluster hops, the premier hop of the 19th century in California. That will explain it a bit better. And our own lager yeast. This all malt brew is krausened with and lagered in our cellars. Its golden colour, distinctive aroma, creamy head, and balanced depth of flavour and smooth finish make it Anchor California Lager, a delicious celebration of California's unique brewing heritage. So yeah, as many of you know, California of course is one of the kind of premier brewing states in America these days, probably the premier brewing state actually, but Oregon is actually catching up to them, I believe. Oregon's got some really nice beers, but you can see it's got a really nice label on it, this one. This is apparently this image of the bear that's on here is taken from a nice woodcut that somebody did. I forget the guy's name, but it's meant to be, it actually looks very, very nice. This is probably my favourite label I've seen from Anchor so far. You can see the little top label on there with the Anchor symbol on it, and this is the typical Anchor Brewery bottle cap. So without further ado, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting then. I need to actually get a bottle of the old Foghorn to review for you at some point too, because I've tried it on a couple of occasions, but I've never actually got round to reviewing it for you. I need to get the Bock beer as well. There's quite a few Anchor ones that I'm still to review for you, so I've still got maybe about 5 or 6 more Anchor reviews that I can actually do, and of course then you've got their special edition beers on top of that. So as you can see, this guy has poured a really nice kind of bright, actually quite a bright orangey amber lager colour here. You can see it's transparent. If I put my fingers behind it, you can just see them moving about there. There's a finger of a frothy white head, which is really nice looking, and some carbonation's quite visible as well. There's a lot of big bubbles going up towards the bottom of the head there, and just a little bit of them sticking to the side of the glass, so it looks a very, very nice beer. So let's have a look at the aroma on this one. You can see as well the head's retaining quite well. But yeah, you can definitely smell the malty character off this. It's got quite a kind of biscuity sweetness, this. Definite biscuity and slightly caramel presence on this one. A little bit of cereal character I think too. But it has that typical kind of corny sweetness that you expect from lagers. It doesn't smell, in honesty, it doesn't smell too different from a typical macro lager. But then again, a lager beer tends not to have such a kind of big nose on it really. But there's a kind of floral and slightly grassy hop character in this one, and a little bit of lemony citrus too, but you've got a big malt base in this. Typical kind of corny smelling malts, a little bit of biscuit, a little bit of cereal, maybe a bit of caramel and bread too, so all the typical elements of your lager beer are in this one. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. So this is the California Lager from Anchor Brewing Company in California in the States. Slàinte. So yeah, on first taste, it actually comes across as quite a hoppy beer. But when you let your mouth adjust to it a little bit more, that's when you start to get some of the more malt flavours coming out of it, I would say. Very first time I'm trying this one, incidentally, I forgot to say that. But yeah, just let your mouth adjust to it before you go and pick out all the different flavours in it. So it's quite a nice malt forward beer, this one, as you would expect a little bit when they're saying that on the label. Yeah, so in the middle of the palate, where you would expect the malty character to come out, you've got a nice light bready malt base there, and that just blankets the middle of the palate like I was saying. Down the very middle of your tongue, you're getting a little bit more of a caramelly and slightly biscuity sweetness. There is a cereal component there, and you can just feel that little bit of slightly dry character as you move out towards the side of your tongue from that kind of middle section, going right down the middle. You can just taste a little bit of that there. But yeah, really nice tasting beer actually, and one of the better lagers I've had. A lot of beer reviewers don't really like reviewing lager beers for you, but I think, you know, it's a style that a lot of people like, and you really should give it a chance. I enjoy a good lager every so often, but I have to admit I prefer the more sort of hoppy or golden ale lagers, if that makes sense. But yeah, this one is quite nice because at the same time it has a good dose of kind of malty sweetness, but there's a good bit of hop character in there too. So around the edges of the palate, you're actually getting quite a smooth, grassy character, but when the liquid's actually on your tongue, I think there's a bit of kind of aromaticity coming out of it. Kind of floral aromatic character, but around the edges of your palate and the aftertaste, it really is a very smooth, grassy character. Just a little bit of kind of lemony citrus, just at the very front of the tongue as well, coming out. Yeah, you'll get a little oily bubble that just kind of forms on your tongue just right behind the very tip of it, and you'll get some lemony citrus flavours coming out of there. It's really quite interesting, actually. But yeah, there's a good balance of the flavour here too. As I say, you've got that sweet kind of caramelly biscuit flavour right in the middle of your palate, and then that bready underlining in the beer, and a little bit of cereal dryness. That cereal character in the beer, incidentally, makes the transition to the grassy hops from the malt base of the beer, so the flavours blend together really well in it. Lager beers are always quite simple in terms of the flavours that you're going to get from them, and this one is also, but the flavours are a bit more pronounced, if that makes sense. You've got a good dose of hoppy character around the edge of the tongue, and you've got a good bit of this kind of nice malty sweetness, and the cereal character makes it quite interesting as well. But yeah, those properties of those of the hops that are in that, what was it called again? The cluster hops. They're definitely quite interesting. It's very smooth and very grassy, but at the same time, when the liquid's actually on your tongue, you're getting a bit more of a kind of floral aromatic-y character out of it. So it's really quite interesting in that regard. But yeah, it's a nice lager beer, this one. So if you enjoy your lagers and you see this one about, definitely give it a go. So in terms of the mouthfeel, this one, I would say definitely quite light-bodied, a bit heavier than some of the sort of premier export lagers that you're going to come across, but still quite light-bodied and quite easily drinkable, I would say. So you've got a little bit, sorry, my computer's going crazy, you've got a little bit of a kind of as I say, you've got a nice malty sweetness in there, but there is a little bit of dry character on the palate from that cereal element to the malt base there. And around the edge of the tongue, you're not really getting much in the way of dry character. It's actually a very smooth and quite wet grassiness that's coming out on the tongue of this beer. So it's really quite nicely done. The carbonation on it's quite smooth, and as I say, it's quite light-bodied. A little bit heavier though than some of your premier lagers. But a very, very nice lager beer, this one, I have to say. So if you do enjoy a good lager, then definitely give it a go. But yeah, thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please let me know your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it before. Always interesting to read your comments. Until my next beer review, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and like my Facebook page. Add me as a friend on Untappd as well. It'd be really cool to hear from you guys on there. I thank you again for watching, but slàinte for now. And I will be returning to California and to the Anchor Brewery at some point in the future. Cheers.